George Mueller, who was one of the most frugal and obedient and even at times impoverished servants, impoverished himself for the benefit of the kingdom, he always said this. He said, I never want someone to look at me and see me worried or sad or confused or bewildered, because I don't want them to think that my master's not a good master. One of the things about the Christian life, and that again is such a rebuke to me, is people ought to look at me and they ought to see a seriousness, they ought to see purpose, but they ought to see joy. C.S. Lewis said that was maybe one of the greatest characteristics of true Christianity. Now, we're not going to go into the prosperity gospel, which we don't believe. The purpose of walking with Christ is not joy. But in walking with Christ, how can we not have joy? Even when our body is filled with sickness, trials are all around, and it seems that some of the things most beloved to us are being torn apart. Yet we should still have joy, because our joy and our blessedness is fixed not in what we do, not in what others do to us, not in our circumstances, but our joy is fixed in the perfect person of Jesus Christ and the perfect work of Jesus Christ. Now he says here, in these next verses, he's going to teach us as Christians how to walk in blessedness, how to increase in blessedness, how to be happy. I know that sounds trite to some of you who are very spiritual. But after all these years, I've realized that one of the most blessed fruits of Christianity is just being happy. Being complete, being whole, having joy. And he's going to tell us how to do it. Now, before we look at this, I want to look at a contrast between the teachings of Jesus Christ and not just the modern day contemporary secular thought, but the teachings of Jesus Christ and a lot of teaching that goes on in the church today. Let's look at a contrast, because we do know this. Everybody wants to be happy. Everyone wants to be blessed. The question is, how do we get there? And just a quick summary, let's look at a contrast. The world says, blessed are those who are self-confident and independent. The movers and shakers who grab the bull by the horns. And they make out of their life what they want it to be. They forge with their own two hands their life. Jesus said, blessed are those who recognize their absolute need of God and live in constant dependence upon Him. The world says, blessed are those with healthy self-esteem and an optimistic view of mankind. Does that sound familiar? And Jesus said just the opposite. Blessed are those who mourn over their fallenness and the fallenness of their world. But again, I want to catch you here. They mourn. And they mourn enough so as to turn their eyes off of themselves and to place their eyes upon Jesus Christ, and then their mourning is turned to joy. You see, there's a godly purpose for mourning. We do not mourn for mourning's sake. We mourn because it causes us to take our eyes off of self and place our eyes upon Christ, the only one who can fill us. Now, the world says, blessed are the driven, who put themselves first, make their own plans, and go to any length to get what they want. Now I want to tell you something. That is pumped into the head of our youth, even by parents. You go out there. You do it. You win. You get what you want. No one's going to give it to you. You take it. Jesus says, blessed are the meek, who seek the glory of God, His purpose in the world, and who submit to His will. The world says, blessed are those who are satisfied with the priorities and treasures of this world. One of the great ways you can tell whether or not you're converted is this. Are you so satisfied with the things of this world that you don't need Jesus? Except for that little thing you do on Sunday. You're so filled with the world, its activities, its things, its ideas, its dreams, its visions, its purposes, that you don't need to be satisfied in Christ. Jesus said, "Blessed are those who recognize the temporal nature of this world and hunger and thirst for God, for God's kingdom, and greater conformity to His will." I would put it this way: blessed are those who recognize this is not their home. That they are strangers, and they are pilgrims, and they are outcasts. And they're like, if they try to fit into this world, they're like trying to stick a square peg in a round hole. They just don't fit. Blessed are the misfits. And He says, blessed are those who demand the best from others and distribute rewards and punishments based on performance. I'll give you exactly what you deserve. I had a young man one time, I was praying at the front of the church, and it was during a meeting, and a lot of people had come forward, and a young man kneeled down right beside me and began to pray, "God, I just want you to give me what I deserve." I stopped him. I tapped him on the shoulder. I stopped him. I said, "No. No. The last thing you want is for God to give you what you deserve. Because, young man, you deserve the deepest part of hell." But at the same time, we have to be careful. If we realize that we do not want what we deserve, but desire the grace of God, as David Miller said, those who believe in sovereign grace ought to have some of their own. If we believe that God has granted us grace, we should grant grace to others. And then Jesus says, blessed are the merciful who recognize God's mercy in their own lives and seek to reflect that mercy in the lives of others. The world says, blessed are those with a singular devotion to self, who put themselves first and are willing to compromise all other loyalties in order to attain their goals. Again, if you do not think that's not a main theme in this world, then you have deaf ears and blind eyes. Jesus says, blessed are the pure in heart. That doesn't mean some person with a monastic lifestyle who lives on a mountain. But blessed are the pure in heart, who have an undivided loyalty to God and the advancement of His kingdom. The world says, blessed are those who make self-preservation their highest goal. One of the greatest sins, now I'm going to say this, recognize that I have the greatest respect for pastors. I think it's the highest calling in the kingdom. But one of the greatest sins of pastors in America today is self-preservation. To preserve self, they will turn away from preaching the truth. Jesus said, blessed are those who risk themselves and everything they have for the promotion of God's peace in the world. The world says, blessed are the moderately religious, who have the respect of this world and are never labeled fanatical. Jesus said, blessed are those whose conformity to Christ and passion for truth are so evident that they are disdained and persecuted by this world and by the moderately religious.